This meeting is being recorded.
Got it. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our 8th episode. As you know, this is a semi-weekly group for us guys who are involved in Optavia, so we can be here and discuss the life transformational program that we all know that is Optavia. So we're excited to have you here. We're going through Jamil Frazier's book, The 12 Shifts. So if you're not familiar with that, that's okay. We're just going to kind of discuss one shift tonight, specifically shift number 8, which is tell your story. And if you've read the book, you'll know it's an extremely short chapter, but honestly, it's a pretty powerful chapter. So I'm excited for it. This week's meeting might be a little bit less structured than we've had in the past, just primarily because of the nature of it. It's all about telling your story, but just a couple of quick things here. First, we go over every time. We want to make sure that we limit crosstalk. We all know that Zoom can be a wonderful platform, but also frustrating if there's talking over each other. So if you can, please keep yourself muted while you're not talking. If you want to share something, please feel free to raise your hand. We want to try to stick to topics that are not divisive. So let's try to stay away from politics and religion. Think of this more as like the break room at work rather than your backyard. Usually we have Tom Mesrobian, who is the facilitator moderator for our meeting, but Tom had obligations tonight that he couldn't get out of, so I'm stepping in for him. But that being said, I am not a teacher for this. I am simply a facilitator. So this is a group event. So we really want you to participate in that. So that being said, normally we have 4 components to our Ironmen meetings. It starts off with a story where one of us shares some part of our story, and then we go into sorry about that. Weird. Sorry. So story, and then we go into our study time where we actually talk about the book itself. Then we go into a support time where we can usually share a recipe with each other, and then our sharing time, which we will stop the recording so we can have conversations that maybe we don't want recorded and published. But the thing about this week is the chapter is tell your story. So the more and more I thought about this, the more and more I thought, rather than just trying to focus on one of us telling a story, because actually I think most of us have told a story here, just as we feel led to during this time, we can each share a little bit of our story, or maybe an aspect of our story that we haven't heard before. Alan and I were talking before 7:30 when we were getting set up, and just some interesting conversations about, the things that happen in our lives. One of the things that Jamil focuses on is this idea that, your story, no matter what it is, has an impact on somebody. He, tells this memory of a coach that he was working with who was really upset that she didn't have some kind of significant story to tell. And she was concerned that because what she perceived as not a big story like Jamil's, she wouldn't be able to touch people's lives the way Jamil does. But the reality is we all have a story that's going to touch somebody. Now, what's cool to me is that, the way the world works is we are all different. So my story might resonate well with Slimothy, but it might not resonate at all with either of the Johns that are here. And it's just, that's how it goes. One of the illustrations he gave in the book that I really liked was This guy is walking down a path and he falls into a pit. And he shouts up for help, and walking by is a doctor. And the doctor writes a prescription on his pad and throws the paper down in the pit and keeps walking. So the guy is still shouting for help, and a priest walks by and hears him shouting for help. And so the priest writes a prayer on a piece of paper and throws it down into the pit with the guy. And finally, a third guy who happens to be a friend of his walks by, and he's shouting, "Help me, help me, help me." And the guy says, "Okay," and jumps in the pit. And the guy's like, "What are you doing? Now we're both stuck in the pit." And the friend says, "No, wait a second. I've been here before. I know how to get out." And that's what our stories are. You know, maybe it's not a rags to riches story, or a drug addict overcoming addiction kind of story, but maybe it's the perseverance through the mundane, or maybe it's the dealing with a parent who doesn't approve of you, or whatever that is. But people won't ever know that unless we're sharing our stories. And I really believe that that's the thrust of that whole chapter here. So that being said, I'm just curious, does anyone here have a piece of their story that maybe they want to share with the group? That and we can open this up for discussion too. Are you in that category of feeling like your story isn't impactful? Feel free to come off mute and just chime in if you want. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep talking. So I go ahead, Tim.
Well, I was just to say, I mean, and I think most know my story. Being type 2 diabetic since '89.
Tim, you got muted somehow.
Okay, don't know how that happened, but anyways, no, most know my story. Type 2 diabetic since '89. Heart attack in 2018, flatlined on the table. And, and it just, I know that little story that I do have, has had an impact on people. One of our clients, Paul, from my parents' church in Pennsylvania, he saw, as the times we would go up to see mom and dad's, he would see our change. And we were friends on Facebook. And his wife really wanted him to do Optavia. And eventually he reached out to me and says, "I'm finally ready." And I just, he would see my stuff on Facebook, and not that I put a lot on Facebook. I probably should use that medium more, which I don't. But your story can have an impact even if it's not out there very often. You never know who it's going to impact, who it's going to affect. And and Paul, I mean, he's posted some things on the change wall, but he's lost probably close to 80 pounds now. I mean, even his glasses, I shared this with him. Even his glasses look too big on his face now. And it struck me because he sent me a picture one time and in the beginning, and then he's same glasses, but on a different face, looks so much bigger on him now. But your story can have an impact. You just may not know it, but it does for sure.
So I know one aspect of my story that I've struggled with is I first started on Optavia in 2019, January of 2019. And in those first 4 months, I lost, I think it was 80 pounds. And I had gotten to the lowest weight of my adult life. And then a whole bunch of stuff happened. Our life kind of imploded. And it it culminated with not only had we had to decide to leave our life in Africa behind, but we ended up having to leave our church. I decided I had to go back as an engineer, and then the night before I started my new job, my dog died. It was just, I mean, it was just awful, and I was not plugged in well enough to the Optavia community, to the life book. I wasn't connected with my coach. So, what do you think happened? Over the next couple years, I had 17,000 day ones, and I ballooned up to the highest weight I had ever been as an adult, tipping the scale at 415 pounds. So the part I've struggled with is, coming back as a Optavia health coach. What kind of health coach goes through that? But the reality is that's my story. And it's not a wholly unique story either. A lot of Optavia coaches, a lot of people in general have had that kind of situation occur in their lives. Now, the question I have to ask myself, as I go through this is, can I get over my own pride and my own ego enough to allow that part of my story to be a part of my story? Because who knows who that's going to touch? Who else is out there who's ashamed that they had a large weight loss and then put it all back on and thought, okay, well, now I'm not good enough, so I'm just going to stay away from it. Well, that's not the truth at all. Anyone else? Yeah, Joe, go ahead. Alan, do you have a way to unmute Joe?
I have only a way to ask him to unmute. I don't think I can unmute him.
Yeah. Joe, probably.
There he is. He might be there now. I don't know if he's unmuted or not, but.
He still shows as muted. The bottom left-hand corner of your screen, Joe, there should be a little microphone symbol. Okay, well, Joe, you keep looking for that. If you find it, raise your hand again. Meanwhile, who else has some thoughts or a piece of their story that you want to add?
I thought I'd just say hi. I'm back. I was
Hey, Andy.
on once a couple of months ago. Yeah, I see everyone's name, but I don't see mine. So I guess does my name show up on the?
Yes.
Okay, it does. Yeah. So I had open heart surgery 4 weeks ago, and it was planned. It was something we were monitoring for a while. Had a mitral valve prolapse, and so I went through with it, and turned out a 4-hour surgery went to 8 hours. And everything worked out well. That I've got a very good repair. It's for life. I won't have to get a valve replacement. Now they got a valve repair, and I won't have to be on blood thinners. But I will tell you that it's been a month, and I definitely have been clinging to comfort food because there's a depression when you get like health issues and heart surgery, and you're trying to get back, and suddenly I'd feel myself like just sad or melancholy, and so I guess it's a bad habit, but yeah, pieces of pie and stuff, so I was giving myself a license to do that. But I just asked Jim Rotenberger for the link. Sorry, I'm a little late getting on here. Quite a little technical difficulty, but I got this intent, and I know you shouldn't put it off to tomorrow, but I got this intent to March 4th with health. So I've got a couple weeks, February 28th, a week from next week, my heart surgeon will give me the green light that after a month I'm allowed to drive again. And I would be able to, another couple weeks, I'll be able to lift more than 10 pounds. And I'll be going to cardiac rehabilitation. So I figured, well, I want to march forth with health here. I got all my Optavia stuff. And it does work, no doubt. You know, I did it before. So I'm not at my highest weight. I was at once at 268. I'm like 254. I was at lowest at 225. And but I always wanted to be under 200 for life. So it's gonna be a long haul. And I figure I'd just get back on this chat, see if I can get some encouragement. And I know what the answer is. Stay on plan. I know it. I know what the answer is. You do that, it works. You know, I mean, I know it. So I don't know. So yeah, some little hiatus, little health correction for me, and now I'm back. So hi.
We're glad to have you back, Andy. And I'm glad to hear that the surgery went well for you. That I have to imagine that was a little on the scary side.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I had 60% of my blood going the wrong way in the mitral valve. I never felt a symptom at all. But they heard heart murmurs and they decided it had to be done. And I got to interview 4 surgeons at different places, decided to go a low invasive method. Turned out they had to abandon it during surgery and they went the most invasive. So now I have twice the holes in me. And if they went from 4 hours to 8-hour surgery, and I still have to go to a wound center tomorrow. I got a visiting nurse every day. It's very depressing when you have this hole in you that won't heal, and they keep having to pack it and clean it and put stuff in there and all that. So I'm just kind of trying to hold my own. I'm not really. I'm just not. I'm just putting off. Optavia right now, but I got this March 4th into health date in my head, and I want to sort of like if I can't, I have one redeeming grace about myself, which I know is if I get myself in a rut, I can be stubborn to stay right in that rut and not quit. I know I just got to get. So you're marching forth, soldier, and don't look back, and yeah. So,
I just had a conversation like this with a client of mine. The struggle we have as people who turn to food for stress or whatever the case is, and I'm not trying to compare us to alcoholics, but in a way we are like alcoholics. And the advantage that an alcoholic has is they can eliminate alcohol from their life, albeit hard, but you can survive without alcohol. Whereas we have to eat. And so it's hard. Gosh, it's hard. But it is possible. Now, Andy, I have to say, I'm assuming that you're talking with your doctor if you're going to get back on the 5-in-1 plan.
That's a good point. I did think about that because it works so well and so quick. I thought, I wonder what kind of stress that would give to my heart. Very good point. I'm going to bring that up when I see the heart surgeon on next Tuesday.
Yeah.
I better do that.
Ask Jim. There is a pamphlet for healthcare providers that'll explain exactly what the program is in terms that they'll resonate more with and be able to give you proper advice.
Okay.
So the last thing we want you to do is, hurt yourself somehow without realizing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Andy hit on an idea there that I think a lot of us, or I can relate to it. So it's part of my story. When we plan to do something, when we make it a focus, when we get all of our energy behind moving in one particular direction, it's easier to get the momentum moving and to continue with that momentum than it is to constantly shift gears to being on and off and on and off. And the results are a lot more consistent when you stick to that driving plan. And a lot of us have something that we do for a living where attention to detail and really following the process is very, very important. You know, if you're in something in construction trades, you don't stop in the middle of a project and just go, it's good enough. You know, you got to get to the end of putting the wall back together, making sure that the wires are connected and the plumbing's connected. And if the design calls for a certain amount of structural support, you got to have that structural support there, all of that stuff. You know, when we are going through our lives in general, our initial family upbringing came with a roadmap. And I was talking with John a little bit about this earlier, but I can talk. My family can talk. I could tell my story for 6 years and never get to any detail. Let's not go there tonight. But the idea that food can be sustenance, food can be a source of pleasure, food can be, we eat because we're sad, we eat because we're happy, we eat because it's Tuesday, we eat. But over the course of time, we can learn habits of how to fuel as opposed to feeding, as opposed to going out and formally dining. And they're very different structural settings. And where one of the places that I go sideways in my head is I'm old enough to remember being in high school in the 70s, and they would bring in people who were recovering addicts and have them talk to the high school kids about why they shouldn't do drugs. But the lesson that the kids got in high school was, well, look, these guys all survived it, duh. Which was not the lesson that you wanted to get. It's not, let's go to the buffet and have all we can eat before we go on getting healthier. No, and I don't want to necessarily tell a story that leads somebody to that. So when Jamil talks in the book about finding that place to sit and listen and think a little bit about what your story is and how it's going to impact people, and practice telling it and prepare to tell it in a way that's going to get the message across. I really do have more than one story, and I have to determine which story is appropriate for the setting that I'm going to be presenting it in that regard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Alan, I think you bring up a really great point that depending on the audience, the setting, our stories are appropriate or not appropriate. And we have to be very astute, you know, to our surroundings as to what parts of our story we share. Because sometimes it's not a good time to share certain parts. That's an art all of itself, or all in its own, I should say.
The one thing that I will say that I've got in the back of my mind is, now I've never been on any kind of narcotic drug that called me back, but they often say that you know, that kind of like stimulus you get probably from food too, and you know, you remember what it tastes like, or you remember the drug and how you felt, whatever. I can clearly remember being on Optavia and saying to myself after getting through that first week or whatever, I would remember clearly how my mind felt when I'd say, no, wait a second. You are not hungry. You're doing exactly what you should do, and you're not craving to get off of this thing. You're satisfied, you're full, and you can do this, you know? So I'm trying to, I want to be able to push through to that point, because that first week or 10 days is the hard part. And then all of a sudden you're almost like addicted to it. And so I'm working. That's what I'd like to do, is get where I pierce through that difficult time, So I'm
You've
going to
done it
use,
before. You can do it again.
yeah, I can do it again. I'm going to use that addiction. The thing that makes addicts addicted is something
Mhm.
stimulate in their brain. And I would say that I remember Octavia working, and I was stimulated to stay with it. And I was shocked that I wasn't hungry, and I was doing it. I was right on plan. So this time around, the one thing I've never done, I've tried, but I've never done it, is sit down and do that life book thing, So I wanted to get up early
Mhm.
in the morning. I want to change all my habits. That's the problem, when all of a sudden you want to turn over a new leaf. It's like you want to turn over all these new leaves at once. I'm going to get up early. I'm going to do my life book. I'm going to be on spot on, So I might be over. I can kind of set you up for failure, maybe, because you just put too much on yourself. But I don't know.
So here's a challenge for you, Andy, because I'll admit I struggle with this one too. I often have grand ideas of, okay, I'm going to wake up early and go and do journaling and meditation and all this kind of stuff. My challenge to you tonight, after we're done with this meeting, put your hands on your life book and put it somewhere you have to see it.
Yeah.
And then once a day, open it up. I don't even care where, just open it somewhere and literally read one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And just leave it at that for like a week or something.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to read more, go for it, but make a commitment to yourself that you will read one sentence a day. And I mean, that's what the whole book is about. It's those micro habits. And if we start building those little tiny things, it'll become more natural for you to reach for it at some point and dig into it more. That's just an idea.
It's addictive too. I mean, like I say, once
Yeah.
you open up, you start reading it, you're like, my gosh, this is great stuff, But I don't know where it all goes south. But so March 4th, I'm going to March 4th on March 4th. I got to pick a day, so I
All
figured
right.
out something.
Good. Joe, I see you got on video, and at one point you were off mute. Did you still have something you wanted to share?
No, I'm good. I was on my phone and now just moved over to my iPad and things are working.
Great. Well, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have anything that we want to discuss or contemplate? Problems we can solve? Peace in the Middle East? Okay. So yeah, shift 8, tell your story. You never know who's around you that's going to be affected by it. And we just don't know what that ripple effect is going to be. It's important for us to take what has been given to us and to share it with the people that have been put in our sphere of influence, whoever that may be, and for whatever extent it may be. But I personally believe we have an obligation to uplift the people around us, and a huge portion of that is to just be authentic with who we are, and to be open and honest about that with people. And I think we'll find an awful lot of common ground as we go and do that. So we've come to the portion where normally we do our recipe share. And to be completely honest, I hadn't connected with anyone to do this. So I was hoping Jim Rotenberger was going to be on here tonight, because I wanted to ask him about those fries he talked about a few weeks ago. Does anyone remember? There was the delicata squash that he cut up and roasted into a French fry-like thing. No? Okay.
I remember it. I remember
Okay.
it. That was the last time I was on. It was
okay.
a good 2 months ago.
Yeah. Last week, or the last meeting for Shift 7, I had shared the pizza. I know one of the things, because tonight I was struggling to figure out what we were going to do, and I ended up eating one of the at-home taste of home meals that you get from Optavia and you microwave, because I was just too tired to cook anything else. But one really easy thing, there's a taco skillet bake, and it's literally just like ground turkey, browned up with some taco seasoning, and then you toss it with some diced up zucchini, some diced up tomatoes, and then throw some raw spinach in with it and cook it down, and then put some cheese on top of it. And you get your whole lean and green meal in with that, and it's delicious. I made it a few weeks ago, and my wife took it in for lunch, and everyone that she works with was like, "Oh my gosh, what's that?" It does smell really good, and it tastes good, and it reheats well. So there's a fairly easy one. And if you were to go on the Change for a Better Life wall and search taco, it would pretty quickly. I always like that, we're given the guidelines of what a lean and green is in terms of calories, fat, carbohydrates, protein, sodium, so that we can experiment. I don't know about you guys, but I love cooking. I really love grilling. One of my goals is to get myself a nice smoker someday, so I can enjoy that as well, because I really do enjoy smoked meats. But you go to a restaurant and it's usually like pulled pork, which of course is phenomenal, but it sure isn't good for you. Just way too fatty. But we can still get lots of great flavors and all kinds of different things. So that being said, I know we're fairly early for our normal meetings here, but I think we can wrap it up in terms of this portion of it. We'll stay on for a few minutes and just see if there's anything we want to talk about offline. But if you're watching this as a recording, thanks for joining us. You are always welcome. Love to see you live, and hope you have a great night. So Alan, you can go ahead and stop the recording.